listen. I am going to name this episode Better Being Episode because I saw a Nathan Pyle comic today on Instagram where the two little beings, having a conversation about being a better being in a few days starting from New Year's. Of course, referring to New Year's resolutions people make. That's ironic for me. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. If I want to do a thing, I just do the thing, and I don't leave it to start on January 1st. Although New Year's is a very spiritual time for me personally. When I was a kid, New Year's was celebrated the way that people here celebrate Christmas. We would have a big tree. Some people had a real one, some people had a plastic one. We would decorate it early in December, presents underneath it. On the 31st, you would gather with your family, and when the clock strikes midnight, it's New Year's. I think they let us probably open the presents before because it's hard to wait until midnight. It was the only night of the year I was allowed to stay up that late with the adults. And there was a saying that the way that you receive New Year's, the way that you celebrate New Year's is the way that New Year's will keep going for you, is the way that your year will turn out. And so you were always trying to be in a good mood and wear beautiful clothes and be with your loved ones. Celebrate it in a way that you would like for your year to continue on. We had a thing with you would get new clothing in your presents usually because you're supposed to wear new clothes as you ring in the new year. It is after 10 p.m. It's a Tuesday night, and I have a full day of work tomorrow, but I really wanted to record this and have it up as soon as I could. I had a really lovely Christmas, actually. I spent it with my best friend's family. First, I went down to LA to see my mom and my grandma for a couple days last week. I left on Wednesday and spent 2 nights with my grandma in LA proper, and then I drove up to Palmdale and spent a night with my mom. And I brought my recording equipment because I wanted to ask them some questions. And I did, but I had my Yeti, my microphone that I have, set up not in the right setting. And so my mom sounds kind of far away and underwater, which is a very rookie mistake. And I am a rookie, so it's a mistake I'm allowed to make. But it's still a bummer. So I'm not sure that I will use that footage or have to re-record with her at some future point when we are in the same room together. But after I got back from LA, Palmdale, I got back on Saturday, which was Christmas Eve. I'm still confused about Christmas things, but I think I've got it now. I think Andy explained it to me in a way that I might remember for next year. So Christmas Eve, I did not join them for dinner that night. I just hung out here at my house and read my book for a while and went to bed. It was lovely. And then on Sunday, we got up early, and at 8 a.m. we were on the road to Andy's sister's house where everybody was. We opened presents, we had breakfast, and then we came back over to our side of town and cooked. And I went to another friend's house to say hello and have a glass of champagne, and then went to the gym, did some lifting, came back, cooked a bunch of vegetables, oversaw some pork belly being cooked for the dinner at night that we had all together next door. I live next door to my bestie's house, so where all of her family gathered, same sister, kids, husband of the sister, and mom and stepdad, and another grandpa. Anyway, it was a full house. They also have 2 dogs, so 2 dogs. They have such a beautiful house, so beautifully decorated for Christmas. Gorgeous Christmas tree. I put some up on my stories. Maybe I'll find some of those pictures and put them up when I post about this episode. Yeah, it was really sweet. We had a really great dinner, and then everybody wanted to watch a movie, and we did a movie hat situation where everybody put in a movie and pulled it out of the hat. And so I got my favorite movie to be pulled out of the hat somehow. Beautiful. I wanted it. I wanted everyone to watch it with me. I wanted to watch the movie, and I wanted everybody to be into it. So I got my wish, which was cool. It's a good Christmas wish. My favorite movie, it's from the 80s. It's Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. Growing up, we had some movies. We didn't have a lot of American movies, but we had some, and they kind of trickled in more and more as I was growing up. We had Coming to America. We had Omen movies and Freddy Krueger and Schwarzenegger movies, The Terminator, some Steve Martin movies. We had Pretty Woman. Yeah, so like kind of the big classics. Taxi Driver, The Godfather, I think maybe. But yeah, I had not watched all of them. I wasn't really allowed to. I was pretty little still, but I was allowed to watch Coming to America. And I loved it. And I've now probably seen it, I don't know, 50 times in my life, I'm guessing. I love to watch it once a year if I can help myself. But I used to watch it more often than that. Anyway, so we watched it all together with the fam. It was awesome. And then on Monday, they all decided to get matching tattoos. Not all of them. Some of them aren't old enough. Some didn't want them. But the old enough 3 generations of people in that family. So my bestie, her mom, her sister, and her sister's kid. And the idea stemmed from the grandma, the mom of the mom. So that would have been the great grandma of the youngest family member who got a tattoo, who's actually not that young anymore. They're young adults. They're over age, of course. They're 20, I believe. The grandma, great grandma, she was called the Sky Lady because she was really into the sunsets and the sunrises and the rainbows and such and the moon. And so they got a sunset. I designed a sunset and they all got the sunset in different colors. I suggested that each person have their own choice of colors. And then I also, before the sunsets, I also tattooed my bestie's stepdad, who had been wanting a tattoo from me for years. So we finally got around to it. It's a piece of script. But essentially, I was tattooing them all, and it was a beautiful chaos in the shop. And my dog was so happy to lay across people's laps and beg for snacks, and it was awesome. So we hung out at the shop for like a solid 5 hours while I was tattooing everybody. It took a while. And it was wonderful. It was my Christmas gift to them. And yeah, we had such an amazing time all together in the shop. Even let the youngest child, who's not old enough to get tattooed, put little dots on her family members. That was cool. She was really excited. And I was really excited to facilitate. That was my Christmas. New Year's is coming this weekend. I will be spending it with my partner in Mendocino by the ocean, and the dog, of course, is coming. Hopefully it will just be quiet, contemplative, and easy and chill, because that's how I like my New Year's to be. Now that I'm an adult, I don't necessarily want a big party the way that, I got excited about it when I was a kid. I don't want to do a lot of drinking. I want it to be quiet and contemplative. I want to spend a lot of the day on the 31st and the 1st looking at the year that has been and seeing what the wins were and, sometimes the challenges, and then looking at the year ahead and doing a little bit of like mental mapping of like what I would like to come my way. And that's how I like to bring in the new year. I also wanted to give a moment of silence for 2 people that I knew in the last, one of them I've known for years and years, Claire Berenstein. And the other person, Kelly Stapleton, who I've only known for a short time. I only did one tattoo on her. They have both passed away this year. One from cancer, Kelly, and Claire from heart condition. Claire was my friend. She came to me early on in my career, just a couple years in, and she and I connected over being queer, and we had a good vibe. She was older than me. She was hard of hearing, and she was a really incredible soul. She was very sweet, very kind. She loved Lulu. She Lulu sat a few times for me and my ex-partner when we were out of town. She once made a blanket of Lulu's face for her. She brought her things like a jacket one time and treats, of course, and a collar at some point. She was an animal lover, and she was a lesbian, a dyke, and she would go to Michigan Women's Music Festival, which is one of the few places where women with disabilities could be supported, because the people who put on the festival made sure of it. Claire was a love, and her passing was intense. She knew she was gonna die, and so she messaged me one day and she said, "I'm going to die soon. I'm gonna leave you a little bit of money. I hope Lulu's doing okay." And I said, "Oh my God, Claire, are you serious? Like, what is happening?" I hadn't talked to her for a little bit, but we'd check in every so often because she always wanted to add another tattoo here and there. So it wasn't too long, but through the pandemic, we did not connect. And so, I forgot. At one time I went to visit her in San Jose where she lived, and we had pho and we took a walk, and then she gave me a dresser, and I needed a dresser. So I took her dresser. She had some extra dressers, an IKEA dresser, and I put it in my car. And so I had her dresser for a really long time at my house with my ex. I said, "Claire, what is going on?" And she said, "Here's what's happening, and my body will not be able to go on like this much longer. So my time is coming." And we FaceTimed. She was in the hospital, and I said, "I would. Is there something I can do for you? Do you want me to come visit you?" And she said, No, it's okay." And I did. I wanted to go visit her, but literally, a couple days later, she had passed away. Her brother contacted me, made sure of my address, told me she loved the tattoos I gave her, and she loved me and my dog. And I told him how much I also loved her and appreciated her, and that she was my friend. Eventually, he sent me a check for, I believe it was $1,000. It was very, very sweet of her to leave me a little bit of money. It was, in the moment I kind of was like, no, why, what? And then I was like, she wants to give you a little bit of money. Take the money. And I took the money. It was great. It was sweet. It really helped me out when I had COVID and had couldn't work for a couple weeks because I had COVID, and then I had travel plans right after. So August was rough, and it really helped me out in that month. So thank you, Claire. I remember you. I remember working on you. I so appreciate you and all that you are. I have to say, another story about her is that she, we had this conversation early on about trans women because of Michigan, right? And so anybody I talked to about Michigan Women's Music Festival, I would also talk about trans rights and trans women belonging in women's spaces. And so, Claire had the usual kind of, what if this and what if that, and I'm not sure. And I said to her, read this. Why didn't you read this? And I gave her this little book that I had made, that I had self-printed in college. My major in college was gender studies, and my final project was interviewing and photographing a few women that I had interacted with on the trip that I took, trans women. And so my interviews were just personal interviews, life interviews, and the photographs were really beautiful. They were portraits. And so I said to Claire, read this. When you come back, you tell me if you don't think that these women are women. And she read the book, and she was like, "You know what? You're right. I see it. I see what you're saying." And so from then on, she was an absolute supporter of trans women at Michigan, and her mind changed completely. She learned and grew, and at the end of her life, her wife, Bobby, had passed away shortly after I met her. So she was single for a while, and then at the end of her life, she actually ended up dating, for a short time, dating a trans woman. So Claire was a learner and a grower and an amazing human. And I remember you, Claire, and I love you. And now I have taken a sip of whiskey. I'm gonna go into a list of the books I read this year. So if you're not interested in books or reading, you're welcome to turn the podcast off right here and not go on. Or if you just, if you find my voice soothing and pleasant to listen to, and you don't care about books, but you like my voice, well then keep listening. This year, 2022, I read 25 books. It was a number I had set for myself before the beginning of the year. I saw someone's list who had read 50 books, and I said to myself, that's a book a week. That's a lot. I would like to read more than I do read now, but I think I'm going to cut that into half. And so I decided on 25, which was about a book every couple weeks. And I accomplished it. I just finished my 25th book tonight. It's the 27th. And maybe I'll get through one more before the end of the year. I don't know. I'm glad I accomplished my goal of 25 books for this year. Because the year prior and the year prior to that, I think I only read about like 9, maybe 9 or 10. So here we go. My first read of the year was The Gods of Tango by Carolina de Robertis. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing. This was a really beautiful little read. It was a great start to my year. It's queer historical fiction. It has kind of tango culture at its center, but from early 1900s in Argentina. The main character comes on a boat from Italy to Argentina to start a life there. And it doesn't quite work out the way that she hopes it will be. And so she, in order to survive, starts living and passing as a man and completely takes on that identity and lives in that identity for the rest of his life. It's just lovely. It's well written. It's sweet. It's at times it's tender. It's at times enraging. But for what it's like to be a queer person in the society throughout history, I cried. Of course, I cried at the end. I think I cried throughout. It was lovely. Then I went on to read You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat, which is another queer novel. It reads like a memoir. I could see that maybe the author drew a lot on her own life. It's a quick, easy, engaging story. It's good writing. At the center, we have mother issues, queerness, identity, love addiction. Next, I read Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. I'm fascinated with this author, Melissa Broder. I read another book of hers shortly after. She also has a bunch of poems. She has a podcast called So Sad Today, where she just rambles on and kind of in this style, but completely all over the place. There's not much of a theme there at all about her life and mental health, but kind of all over the place. So Melissa Broder is married to a man. I'm not sure if she identifies as queer, but a lot of her writing has a queer tint to it. And this book is very specifically queer. It's a gay love story of sorts. It was freaking delicious. I read it in 24 hours. I wasn't even at home. I was visiting a friend. And midday we went, between that 24 hours, we went skiing. And, I read it the night before, and then we came back from skiing and I kept reading it. It was just so good I couldn't put it down. It's about being Jewish, about being religious, about being secular, belonging to culture, to community. Again, lots of things about mother issues, self-acceptance, body image stuff. It's very poetic. It's luscious, it's descriptive. The sex scenes are really hot, really good. And as a bonus, the love interest of the main character is fat. And it's not made a big deal of. She just is. And it's a beautiful little novel. I loved it. I read Will by Will Smith, mostly because I was really interested in his experience with ayahuasca, which there's like one page of it at the end of the book, but it was worth reading the book. I used to watch Fresh Prince. I like Will Smith. I like his family. I like how, they don't really give a shit. They're just being themselves out there. And I enjoyed it. It was cool to get to know him more. It was, of course, very easy writing, very easy to read, pretty fluffy, pretty surface, but still enjoyable. And yeah, the ayahuasca stuff was really interesting. Next, I read Between Two Kingdoms, a memoir of a life interrupted by Suleika Jahoud. It's nonfiction. It's a memoir of a cancer survivor of really intense cancer. I believe blood cancer is the cancer that she had. It's gorgeously written. It's about the journey through cancer, and then a journey afterwards, a literal journey in a car across the states to meet the different people that the author was in contact with throughout her experience of the illness and the recovery. It's beautiful. She's an activist and a writer, and if you read the book and love her, you can follow her online and keep reading her writing. Next, I read The Pisces by Melissa Broder. That's the other novel Melissa Broder wrote, and I just really wanted more of her, so I read more. This one was memorable. It wasn't quite as interesting and good to me as the other one. It has some similar themes: body image issues, mother issues. It was a quick read. It was interesting. It was kind of a beach read, kind of a lighter read, thought-provoking. I then read Bad Fat Black Girl, Notes from a Trap Feminist by Cecily Bowen. This is a nonfiction piece. She's queer. It's a bunch of essays, very thoughtful about all kinds of stuff: culture, music, blackness, queerness, fatness. Really, really good book. Recommend that one. Next, I read a queer young adult love story, little novella called The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Junauda Petrus. What a beautiful title, huh? The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. And it was just a heart-wrenchingly beautiful piece of writing. It's a Black queer love novel about many things, but the best thing about it is that for the most part, queerness and Blackness in the novel is not conflated with trauma in the way that most writing is. There's for sure hard things and some trauma for sure, but there's also so much sweetness and some amazing family systems and connections, and the love is gorgeous. It was so beautiful. I cried a lot at this one. Next, I read another piece of nonfiction by Aubrey Gordon called What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. Aubrey Gordon is a queer person, and the book is not specifically about queerness. It's about living while fat. And if you care to become the best version of yourself, then you should read this. This should be on your list. I think everybody should read it. Even though it's from a perspective of a white person, a queer person, the stories in it are so unrelatable if you're not fat, and so horrible that you should know about them. If you're a straight-sized person, and by straight-sized I mean you can find clothing in your size in most stores, you can go to the mall and get an outfit, you should read this book. It's important. Some of it is about the medical establishment, but most of it is just about living in our society. And Aubrey Gordon is a great writer. Aubrey Gordon has a podcast called Maintenance Phase. It's a podcast about breaking down diet books and their bullshit, and about breaking down the diet industry's advice and the myths about weight loss and fatness. And it's hilarious and it's great. It's super, super smart. Kind of the primary podcast I listen to these days. I don't listen to a lot of them right now. I don't have as much time as I used to listen because I don't drive as much, but I do still listen to a few, and that's up on my top 3. Next, I read Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica, who is a Argentinian writer, I believe, pretty new. Maybe this is her first novel. I, for some reason, thought that 2 really smart people recommended this book to me. That was not the case. I realized later as I started to ask them about it after I read it, and I hated it. It's a kind of a futuristic novel, kind of set in a future time, dystopian time, when animal meat is poisonous to humans, and so all animals are killed and humans start to breed each other for essentially meat products. It's for sure like a vegan propaganda book, and that doesn't bother me. This specific book, it had no redeeming characters, it had no redeeming beautiful scenes. There was absolutely nothing pleasant in it for my brain. It was all just horrible stuff and terrible scenes that I still can't get out of my head. I hated the main character, and there just wasn't anything in it that I found beautiful. And for me, that's important. Next, I read a really beautiful book, thankfully, called The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. Akwaeke is probably my favorite find, literary find of this last year. I ended up reading a few of their writings, and I am just in awe of them. They are kind of a younger person on the scene, a newer person on the scene. This novel is just breathtaking and queer, and read it. It's about gender non-conforming characters, and it does not take place in the States. It does not take place in this country. And so the descriptions, and it's so visceral. The writing is so expressive, the imagery. I don't know what to say except it's queer and it's beautiful and you should read it. I think it's just brilliant. I absolutely loved it. Of course I wept. Because I had fallen in love with their writing through reading The Death of Vivek Oji, I then read Dear Centuron, which is their kind of a memoir. So the whole title is Dear Centuron, a Black Spirit Memoir. It's written in the format of letters, where they're writing letters to different people that they know and some people they don't know. I believe there's a letter to Jesus in there somewhere. I actually listened to it when I was driving. I believe I was driving down south to see my family. And it broke my heart into a million pieces, and then it put it back together. And I felt like it was written specifically for me, even though I share no identities with Akwaeke Emezi, except for queerness and gender variance. But it had this air of special little secret, like a diary that I found somewhere on the street, and I was reading it, and I connected so hard to it. It was like I felt protective of it. Like I didn't really want other people to read it, although of course I want everybody to know about Akwaeke, and I want them to be known. I want them to be honored for the talented person that they are. I'm not the intended audience for it, but I absolutely related to it and I loved it. Akwaeke, they write for themselves and the people who are like them, specifically Black people, and still I felt like it was a treasure I found that was meant just for my eyes. It's quite an experience to find a piece of writing that speaks to you so loudly. And I hope that you have that experience too, either with this book or another one. My next read was a short little novel called Chemical Pink by Katie Arnoldi, who is an ex-bodybuilding person, a bodybuilder. I found it in some list of books liked by somebody else whose writing I like, so I was like, looks interesting. I'm into working out and a little bit into bodybuilding. This looks interesting. And I read it. Oh, I could actually not put it down. It was so engaging and it just grabbed me and would not let me go until I was done. But it was also just disgusting. It was such a dirty little piece of smut. Not smut in the sex kind of way. It was, well, that too. But it was kink and transphobic. It was body negative. There was themes of child abandonment, sort of abuse. It was not good. It was terrible. But that one, I read it really fast. Some books are like that. They're really bad, but you want to know what happens and you just read them real quick. I then read Akwaeke Emezi's, at the time, had just come out, new book called You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. Just, the titles, they're just, their writing is just, it's so beautiful. I loved the title. I was really looking forward to it. I bought it immediately. I wasn't waiting for it to be available at the library. Most of these books I did borrow from the library, not this one. I wasn't into it. It was a romance novel, and I could have skipped it, honestly. It was pretty. It was nice. I guess I don't regret reading it. It just, it just didn't really grab me the way that their other work did. It was okay. It was fine. If you like romance, the two bisexual characters, but not necessarily super queer. Next, I read Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, who's a contemporary Japanese writer. It was really short. I think it was just a couple hundred pages. I love contemporary Japanese writing in general. It's just a fascinating culture. And this book is about a harmless sociopath whom people just won't let be because Japanese society is really conformist. I thought about this one for a long while. It was really simple, but just, so penetrating. I recommend this one. Yeah, it's very short, a very quick read. To just, give you a short summary, it's about a woman who works at a convenience store and she's really happy doing it. She's happy for the robotic kind of work that, repeats itself over and over again. And because she doesn't really understand how being human works, and she watches people around her for cues for how she's supposed to react to the way that people interact with her. And so being in a place that is so predictable really works for her brain. But of course, her family and other people around her have a really hard time with her being happy working in a convenience store as an adult. Number 16, The Curious Incident of a Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This was one I listened to. I listened to this one with my stepson on a road trip we took this summer. It's a classic book. I thought it was great for me to listen to with my stepson. He was 11 at the time, and we both really enjoyed it. It's a book about an autistic kid as the protagonist investigating the murder of a neighbor's dog, and in the process of uncovering who murdered the dog, he uncovers everything else, kind of unravels his own life. It was really great. I liked it a lot. For a classic to listen with my kid. Next, I read a book called Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune, which is queer and so sweet. The theme is like a post-life, like in between life and what's next sort of category, which I love. I love movies like that. I love books like that. Like, what happens after we die? It's a question that a lot of us wonder about. For sure, I've wondered about that my whole life. So it's a kind of a magical novel. It's got a lot of sweetness and positivity and kind of a queer fairy tale. And I was so charmed by it. Cried, of course. And we need more of these in the world. Next was A Ladder to the Sky by John Boyne, who's a queer writer. He's a gay man. I loved his novel. I loved another one of his novels, The Heart's Invisible Furies, which I read a few years ago, and I loved it so hard. It was my favorite novel of the last few years. I would recommend that over and over again. So I was hoping for more of something similar, just beautiful writing, humor, heartbreak, the intensity and the beauty. But this one left me feeling very meh. It felt really contrived, stiff, not a ton of redeeming characters. Not so much. Not my thing. I'll try his work again at some point, but probably not for a while. Next, I read another book by Carolina de Robertis, who is the author I mentioned first. This book is called Cantoras. It's queer. It's another work of historical queer fiction, and my second foray into her work. It's set in Uruguay during the dictatorship, not that long ago. I guess it was the 70s, 80s. It's really beautiful. It's about 4 women who find each other somehow. They're all queer, and they find a way to get away from society and get away from all of the crackdowns of the dictatorship and the way that the dictatorship is dampening people down and locking up their hearts and minds. These 4 women find a way to find some freedom in their lives away from all of that. And it's beautiful. I'm loving this person's work. I'm absolutely going to read more this coming year. Number 20 was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. Nonfiction. This is a journalistic account. Very important work. It's the story of Henrietta Lacks, who was the woman from whom a white doctor, she was a black woman, a white doctor took cells without her knowledge from her cervix when she was essentially dying of cervical cancer. And those cells ended up being immortal. They wouldn't die. And so they multiplied and multiplied and lived forever. They're still alive somewhere out there, and they have really progressed medicine. Many things have been developed, many medicines, many medical procedures have been developed because of those cells, and yet her family wasn't included in these developments. She still has some of her family still alive. Rebecca Skloot, who is a white journalist, worked on this book for years and years, interviewed the remaining members of Henrietta's family, went all over the East Coast, visiting different sites and collecting whatever information she could and figuring out how she could basically put history back in order and help the family feel included in this process, in the process of their mom having these cells out there still, even though she's been dead for 90 years, I guess, since the 30s, 40s. My memory is not awesome, but this is a really good read. I recommend it highly. Nonfiction is always worth reading, and this reads beautifully. It's just great. One caveat I will say is that I think Black stories should be told by Black people themselves. In this case, nobody was telling the story, and I think Rebecca Skloot did a great job. My opinion is not worth much, but I felt like the work she did was considerate and honest and in integrity. So I recommend. Then I read An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I liked it. I heard about it on some NPR program. The first half is written in the format of letters between a wife and her wrongfully convicted husband, who is imprisoned for rape he did not commit. And then the second is the aftermath of his imprisonment. It was good. It was solid. I liked it. Good writing. I would read more of Tayari Jones. Good style. I really liked it. Okay, number 22 was Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. So I heard about this book for a while now from different sources. I saw it on shelves, kind of in every bookstore. And I had some idea about what it was about. And of course, it wasn't about that at all. I was wrong. But I think because everybody else loved it, it took me a while to get around to it because I just don't like to like what everybody else likes. It's dumb, but it's true. It was one of my absolute favorites for the year, for a novel, a piece of fiction. It's absolutely brilliant and unexpected and surprising and gorgeous and awkward and smart. There's so many references to things that you're going to know about and some things you won't know about. It's a precious little doorway onto a piece of queer culture that those of us who are not a part of it don't know much about it. It takes place in New York. It's essentially about trans women and trans women's culture, like modern trans women's culture, who identify as queer and who live in a big metropolitan city in communities. It's very smart, very kind of, not smart like, of course, the writer is smart, but smart in like smart-assed, I guess, is what I meant to say. It's smart-assed. It's just wonderful. I am going to be keeping an eye on Tori Peters, like whatever she writes, I'm going to read. Really good. Especially if you're queer, you're going to get so much out of it. Just read it. Next, I read number 23 was The Hannah Artist by Alka Joshi. I saw it got good reviews on Goodreads. Looked like it was going to be a pretty easy piece of writing. I like to, after some really thought-provoking things, I like to read something that's a bit more fluffy, if I may say so. It was lovely. It was not particularly challenging. It was nice. It was a fast, easy read. It was colorful and descriptive, and it's a first in a trilogy, which I will keep reading the trilogy. The second one of the trilogy is sitting on my shelf from the library. It takes place in India, in Jaipur. It speaks about caste and class and femaleness and maleness, and it has a little tiny bit of anti-transness in the beginning, so just a warning, like a sentence. Overall, it's fine. It's, very straight, but it's good. And the writer started writing in middle age. I think she started writing in her 40s, and that's always cool, right? Because this is a bestseller. It's cool to see a first book from somebody who did not study writing for for their schooling and started writing later in life. So pretty cool. Especially if you like to travel while you read, you will definitely be on a journey in India inside this one. Next one, I read this next one it took me a while, like 3 weeks to get through it. It's long. It was like 430 pages, pretty dense writing. Another piece of nonfiction called Lady Parts by Deborah Kopakin. Deborah is a journalist, and you will know her from essays from Modern Love podcast, also column. You'll know her from other things. You might not recognize her name, but she's definitely been in the media for a long time now. And she's a beautiful writer, and this is a memoir kind of broken down by her different parts of her body that have had different things happen to them. And it's a memoir about the state of our healthcare and feminism in America today from her perspective, which is a white middle class kind of perspective. And, she's somebody who came from a solid family and a dad who was a lawyer, and she went to Harvard, and she had a lot of connections, and she had a great career in journalism and traveled all over the world. But as she sort of hit her middle age, the jobs dried up, journalism sort of died. She had to sell her soul, work in the worst kind of marketing for like ad clicks on the internet, and keep health insurance, which she had to pay for out of pocket for much of that time. And anyway, she could not really, the book details her struggles to make it work financially. And it's kind of like, well, if she can't make it with all of her privilege, then who can? It's a good illustration of our country and how it's set up and how it is good to be young. I mean, if you want to make it financially, it's preferable that you're young and healthy and childless. I really liked it. It was engaging, enraging, and I felt like I learned a lot. And then the last book, number 25, that I will finish off with was a little novel recommended to me by a client of mine last week. I actually listened to it on my drive back from LA. It's called Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I believe it's her first novel. I listened to it actually on a time and a half, which was my first time doing that. And I thought I couldn't do it, but my brain totally got used to it. It was pretty slow. It was pretty dreamy. It's, I think they tell you it's a piece of horror fiction. I didn't think it was really horror. It was more mystery and fantasy. It's a gay love story. It's very poetic. There's a few little scenes that are a little disturbing, but not too bad. The love descriptions are really lovely, but the rest left me kind of bored, wanting more detail, more things happening. It was okay, but it was gay, which I love. I appreciate a gay love story. So that's 25. I have for sure a bunch of books on my future list. Yes, I have a long list of books on my Goodreads to start picking them up from the library. Yeah, I'm excited for another year of reading really good stuff. I think that my goal this coming year will be a little bit more. I did feel like I could have fit a couple more books in. So let's say 30. Let's say that this coming year will be 30. I don't want to go too high. It feels unnecessary. Like I was looking at something online and there was an article about somebody having read, it was 356 books in the past year. And I was like, really? How? But more importantly, why? Like, your brain is not going to retain that much information. You're going to forget everything you read, I think. I don't know. Maybe they have a photographic memory and their memory is amazing. They're young. It would not work for me. So 30 is going to be plenty for me. Although, good job, that person. Super reading powers. I'm going to go for 30. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in. I hope that your ringing in of your new year will be lovely, and either among loved ones or on your own, if that feels good to you. And either way, I hope that next year will bring you joy and steadiness and snuggles, if you like snuggles, and good food and some comforting thoughts and comfort in your body. That's really important. I wish you well, and until next time.